Today I will be comparing and contrasting Cimabue's Maesta of Santa Trinita and Giotto's Maesta of Ognissanti. Here are the two pieces, Cimabue's on the left and Giotto's on the right, looking very similar with the same subjects and the same colors used, also the same medium tempera on wooden panel. Both are significant pieces in the beginning of the Renaissance art period. Cimabue's Maesta of Santa Trinita, completed in 1286, is thought to hint at the beginning of the Renaissance period. Giotto's Maesta of Ognissanti, completed in 1306, 20 years later, had the same purpose as Cimabue's, but with more influence from the Renaissance period. Both sought to portray the same biblical characters, with both transcendent essence and humanism influence. However, Giotto's piece created more realistic subjects with later Renaissance influence and use of modeling. Cimabue's Maesta of Santa Trinita was originally created to be an altarpiece for the Santa Trinita Basilica in Florence, Italy, shown here. However, today it is found in the Uffizi Gallery. The gold background and lines were meant to also reflect light in this church and to represent the light of the heavens. It depicts Mary enthroned holding Christ as a child. They are surrounded by angels and prophets, which are known to be prophets due to the fact that they are holding scrolls. Mary is two-dimensional looking and very fragile. Typical of the medieval or the Italo-Byzantine period that this piece was created in, she has very elongated features, such as her nose and her hand, shown closely here. Also, the angels' faces all look very similar, showing a limitation in the individuality of the figures in this piece. They also appear to be stacked atop each other with no relation to space. Looking at Mary's drapery, it's etched with gold to show shape rather than the use of shadows and light in later Renaissance pieces. Historians such as Giorgio Vasari say that Cimabue represents the first step away from the medieval period and into the Renaissance. Illusionism is a very common technique used in the early Renaissance period. It can be seen in the throne as if the viewers look into the seat, and the sides of the throne are poking out towards the viewers. The use of modeling can also be seen in this piece underneath Mary's chin. Giotto's Maesta of Ognissanti was done approximately 20 years after Cimabue's Maesta of Santa Trinita in the year 1306. It was also used as an altarpiece for the Church of Ognissanti, also in Florence, Italy. Giotto was Cimabue's student, hence the strong resemblance in the two pieces. This piece illustrated Mary holding Christ as a child as well, also surrounded by angels and prophets. However, in this piece, the prophets are above the angels rather than beneath the throne. Rather than being elongated, Mary occupied the totality of the space of the throne and had a stronger presence in this version of the piece. This is due to Giotto's use of modeling. He contrasted light and shadows in his work, which can be seen in the shadows under her chin, reflecting off her arm and onto her blouse, and in the shadows used to show Christ pulling her blouse towards him, giving him a sense of weight as well. Giotto also used illusionism to create space by foreshortening Mary's knees, creating the impression that they protrude outward towards the viewers. The angels also have more of an individualistic look than they would in Cimabue's piece, and they are overlapped, creating a more realistic sense of space rather than simply floating atop one another. Although the slight differences in the style of the two pieces, they both depict the same figures. Mary enthroned holding Christ as a child, surrounded by angels and prophets. This enthronement of Mary holding Christ as a child is typical Christian iconography in this time period, so it's not uncommon for these two artists to portray the same thing. Both were also commissioned to be altarpieces for churches in Florence, Italy, which explains their large sizes. They were both also done by Florentine artists, pictured here, Giotto and Cimabue. Giotto is Cimabue's student, so there was a relationship between the two. They were done in the same medium, tempera on wooden panel, given the fact that they have the same color used as well. The flat gold background represents the divine light of heaven, further emphasizing that as much as these two artists tried to incorporate humanism into their pieces, Mary and Christ are still divine and enthroned in a heavenly place. Mary is also much bigger than life itself in these two pieces. She's quite bigger than the throne, than the angels, and then the prophets pictured beside her. She was known as the messenger to God. People prayed to her in an attempt to reach God. In both pieces, she's pointing one of her hands towards Christ, as if telling her viewers to pray towards Christ instead of her, that Christ will be the one to deliver their messages to God. Additionally, Christ is holding two fingers as if he's praying for his viewers of the piece. He's also depicted as a homunculus in both pieces. This is typical of this time period as well, in that Christ was too important to be portrayed with baby-like figures. Instead, he was a baby's body with man-like figures. The main difference between the two pieces is the slight Italo-Byzantine influence in Cimabue's and the full Renaissance influence in Giotto's. Cimabue's Maesta of Santa Trinita is known to some as the last of the Italo-Byzantine period and to others the first of the Renaissance. Mary's drapery is shaped with golden lines rather than shadowing, and her nose, hand, and body itself are overly elongated when compared to her figure in later Renaissance works. This emphasizes that she is still a divine heavenly form, rather than the humanistic goal the Renaissance was after. Giotto's Maesta of Ognissanti was completed in the beginning of the Renaissance, therefore it is not as humanistic as some of the later pieces, but the modeling and the illusionism done with Mary's body and the throne sets the tone for later Renaissance pieces. Giotto's Mary was much more bulky, solid, and realistic than Cimabue's version. This was made possible by Giotto's expertise with modeling and his experimentation with light and shadows. Another big difference is the perspective in both pieces. Cimabue's piece does not have one set perspective. It can be seen from above or on either axis when looking at the foreshortening of the throne. However, Giotto was successful in creating a single viewpoint. Looking down on the throne, viewers can see the top of the steps, emphasizing that they are above the eye level of the bottom of the throne. But at the top of the throne, the viewers have to look up to see it, emphasizing that they are placed below the top of the throne. One of the prophets is at the eye level of the viewers, marking the key horizontal point of the piece. This also, in relation to Christ, puts us right below him, literally and theoretically. Although the iconography of Mary enthroned holding Christ as a child is very universal during this time period, there are slight deviances in the two pieces, with Cimabue's slight favor toward the Italo-Byzantine style and Giotto's use of modeling and perspective. Giotto revealed a sense of humanism and illusionism that was not yet apparent in his predecessor's piece. He sought to be the push from medieval to Renaissance in Italian art. As transcendent as these pieces are, the subtle changes and advancement allowed for a continuation of distinctive Christian tradition.